Hi, what's up? Haven't seen you in a while. Oh, you have also grown up. Yeah. Welcome to episode 6 of How to Citizen season 2. In this episode is a task, let me tell you, especially in this country. Understanding media. Thankfully, we have the expertise of Nidhi Razdan, who will take us through this artist's journey of finding out, of understanding what media is, which cannot happen in Bombay. I went all the way to Delhi where I met up with you.
And what we did was we sat down with Nidhi Razdan to understand what is media, and she schooled me on being sanctimonious. I used to be very sanctimonious about this, guys. She is a TV journalist on NDTV, you know that, and she has a very good idea of how TV works, and that is what we spoke about. We also spoke about responsibilities of a journalist and media.
And just one more reason to watch this episode. Nidhi Razdan is leaving for Harvard very soon to start her professorship. So please, now is the time to watch it before she leaves. Hope you have fun.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of How to Citizen. This is episode, what is this? 6.
Six.
Yeah,
This is
it's
episode
episode 6. Yeah. And we've had some very wonderful guests till now.
Incredible.
Incredible.
I can't put it in words.
Yeah.
It's almost like I can't even believe everything happened.
What is
that
happening
happened.
even?
Yeah.
Like, we went a little crazy this
Yeah.
time. Yeah. And you must have seen all those crazy episodes by now. And we have another crazy episode coming your way. And with this crazy episode, we are going to dive deep into understanding media with Nidhi Razdan.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, Nidhi. How do you feel being on this show and reading?
I'm actually excited because I've mostly done like TV, so
Yeah.
a podcast is quite interesting. It's a different format for me.
Is this the first podcast you're doing?
I think so.
Holy
Wow.
crap.
Yeah.
Privilege.
Privilege.
Yeah.
Because I'm from the
Amazing.
vintage school of
Yeah.
media.
No, but so we sent you this chapter 24 hours
Hmm.
before, right? Did you get a chance to read it?
I did. I mean, like, I confess not every line, but yeah, I went through it and some of it made me laugh, but we'll come to that later.
But because when we came, she was like squinting, okay? And then
That's
like,
because of my contact lenses. I can't see. I told you I'm vintage.
But to me, it was like, wait, has she read the chapter at all? Like,
No, now you've got the light on it, so now I can see, you know.
yeah, like,
Vin-
good. So it was the contact.
It was were you always, even as a student, were you always like this? Like before the exam, you have your sheets and you're like, okay, last minute, let me just skim through
No,
them.
actually, I was very good. I was very bookish. You know, unlike my brother who would sit the whole night. Sometimes in the loo, he would sit because my parents would be very strict and say, "नहीं नहीं रात को बेटा सोना चाहिए," and you know, दिन में पढ़ाई करनी चाहिए. But he was the guy who would study at night.
Right.
So once I got up in the middle of the night and he was sitting in the loo on the, literally just sitting on top of this sink and studying because that's the only time he had to study, and he would literally study the night before. But I was always the good child, you know, who would get
Right.
up at 6 in the morning, study all day, sleep on time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite boring. Quite a
But
boring.
like, so which school did you go to?
So I went to different schools. Grew up in England first,
Mm.
then New York City. Came back and studied at APJ School, Sheikh Sarai and Saket here, and then went on to Lady Shri Ram College in Delhi.
So like, you didn't have this chapter.
In 7th grade, where
I
were you?
don't think in 7th grade I was back here,
Huh.
and I don't think we had a chapter on media and advertising at all. Actually, TV hadn't even exploded at that time, like the way it has
Right.
now.
Right.
So I think this is all post that. I
Post
don't
that.
remember anything on
But
media.
you had civics.
We had civics.
What
Like
did
what
you
is
remember of
parliament
it?
and what is Supreme Court and executive legislature,
Right,
judiciary,
Right.
all
right,
that kind of basic stuff.
Right. But then like, so you saw like, now you've read this chapter, and that back then in school you had that civics lesson. Do you see a difference in back then versus now?
I don't remember the civics chapter of my
I thought
7th
you were a
grade,
good student.
but
Pay
who
attention.
remembers? But I have to say, I mean, I wish the entire country would kind of read the basic civics
Yeah.
to understand what the role of each branch of government and
Yeah.
of in a democracy particularly
Yeah.
is. That would be nice.
Yeah.
I think we all need some sort of basic refresher courses on
Yeah,
that.
that's
Yeah.
the idea of this podcast precisely. That
Yeah.
like let's reacquaint ourselves with
Yeah,
the
I mean, I think we
ideas.
would have had like one vague paragraph on media, fourth pillar, blah blah.
Right.
So, but you realize today, like, it's so much more important, so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually, that's very interesting, because I think for every episode we are saying this. I know it's becoming a trope that when I read this chapter, though, I was actually very shook. I was like, this is like a advertisement for a subscription model or something, because they're talking about
Yeah.
media ownership, how perceptions
Biases.
are,
Yeah.
perceptions are created by the media, how advertising influences the media. I'm like, wow.
Also, one thing I would like to point out is that previously it was two chapters, right? Media and advertising.
Right.
And currently they are fused. as
Yeah,
one.
that's what I thought. So like initially when we were like matlab, putting together the show, when we were looking at the 7th grade, so the first season was 8th grade. Okay, but now we are doing 7th grade because society has regressed. So this podcast,
So we're going backwards.
Yes, we're going backwards.
Wonderful.
So we were trying to figure out 9th grade ja rahe hai ya 7th grade ja rahe hai. That happened for 2 months. And I think the new edition came out sometime during that time. So we were referring to the old edition. And we saw that one chapter has just disappeared, which is understanding advertising.
Which will help you understand everything.
Yeah,
Correct.
exactly. But I mean, we had a debate on that, whether it needs to be a separate chapter at all. Because I feel like advertising is just a world in itself, which can go in so many ways. But
But do you think this is like a commentary on how there was separation between the media and advertising, but now that has like
Coalesced.
it has conflated?
Yeah, it's all
a little?
conflated, isn't it? And I mean, look, we get into that, but it's just that the whole media model is so messed up. We are dependent on advertising. We are, our incomes are dependent on that. So that just fuels all kinds of madness in terms of ratings or advertorials, and it's all become really messed up and mixed up.
Right.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because so like I haven't seen the chapter yet, the advertising. I tried to find it online, I couldn't. So we got like these books which were also like the new edition just because of this, and this has the same chapter which we are using today. I was just wondering whether there should be a different chapter for advertising.
For advertising.
Yeah, we have actually debated this in the morning itself, where I think there should be, because advertising is ultimately sort of running the world
It
for
is.
ages now.
It is.
And it would be interesting to sort of also explain to 12-year-olds what it means.
Yeah.
Although this, I have to say, this chapter does touch on that in a kind of overall way. So they've written it really well.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, I think this is something adults need to read
Yeah,
today,
absolutely.
not just kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a 12-year-old, which school were you in again? You were in Delhi.
I was in America and I'd just come back to Delhi. I was coming back to Delhi, by the time I was 13.
Okay, in school, was there like a place which you remember where you hung out with your friends?
No, not really. It took me some time to, I think, make good friendships, because I was one of those. I was like, just a teenager, very upset at having to move back to India.
Yeah.
Being uprooted from my friends. My memories of school aren't like something I hold on to in some nostalgic
Oh.
way. College, yes.
Yeah.
I enjoyed my college days much more.
But okay, so like if tomorrow is an exam,
Hmm.
like civics exam, where would you be sitting revising this
At home.
chapter? At home.
At home
Oh.
on the dining table. That
While
was my
also
place.
looking at pictures of New York and missing it, being like, I wish I was there.
there was no cell phone then.
That's
आप
That's
अपना
correct.
हाथ नीचे कीजिए.
That's true.
I wish we had no cell phones. There
Yeah.
was the good old fashioned landline.
Right. No, this is a segment of the podcast, right? Which I'm trying to now hard figure out. We are coming to your house then to revise this chapter with you.
And I
Okay.
actually think you really need this revision to really take your mind off the uprooting of all your friends and your school, because it's the only way now you can make a mark in this new classroom where you are new is by becoming a topper, right? That's the
Exactly.
that's the only way.
That is the only way.
Send a message, tell them who's in charge.
Yeah. So okay, we are going to the Razdan household.
We are going to the Razdan
Please.
household.
Please come.
Yeah.
Meet my dogs.
Yes. And we are taking over, and we are basically going to start with understanding media. This is the chapter number 6 in the book. And I want to read a bit of it right at the front page of the chapter. What is your favorite TV program? What do you like listening to on radio? Which newspaper or magazine do you usually read? Do you surf the internet? And what have you found most useful about it? Did you know that there is one word that is often used to collectively refer to the radio, TV, newspaper, internet, and several other forms of communication? The word is media. In this chapter, you will read more about the media. You will find out what is required to make it work, as well as ways in which the media affects your daily lives. Can you think of one thing that you have learned from the media this week? That's an interesting
Is that for me?
question. Yeah. Can you think
Seriously?
of something? Yeah.
अभी तो week start ही हुआ है.
हाँ. आज Tuesday.
हाँ,
Like,
so
कल
it's
तो कुछ
like
तो.
कल तो कुछ तो हुआ होगा. No, not really.
Not really.
No.
You haven't learned anything from the media. Oh, that's
What does that
interesting.
say about the state of the media?
I
We are
that
not
I,
learning
yeah.
anything.
I'm very critical about the state of the media.
Right.
You will see that.
I'm very excited to share what I learned from the media this week.
Yeah.
I'll just read this out quickly. This is a news story from Nagpur. Okay. Snake baby video becomes talk of the town.
No way. Where was this?
Nagpur.
Don't say ndtv.com, please. I beg you.
Times of India. Times of
Okay,
India.
that sounds appro. Okay.
Heard about a creature with the body of a python, feet of a chicken, hair of an old woman, and beard like a goat born to humans in Yavatmal? A video claiming this has been doing rounds on the internet and is being widely shared by smartphone users. Which just raises the point where, is there no cross-checking now? Is fact-checking illegal now? What's It is. I think you go to jail if you fact check now. That's
I
the
mean-
trend that we are seeing, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, what does it say about the state of mainstream media if you need fact checkers who are outside the sort of so-called mainstream space,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
They're doing what we should have been doing from the
Yeah.
beginning, which was just to check facts.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's one job. I mean, it shouldn't be a separate job. Oh, you're a journalist. Oh, you're a fact
Uh-huh.
checker. No,
No,
it's
the same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Are we the only country that has that distinction? Is this like
I think so. I mean, I've not really heard. Have you heard of fact checkers in the UK or the US?
I mean,
or
there are
the-
fact checking websites, but I
Yeah.
don't think anybody refers to themselves as fact checkers.
Yeah,
right?
it's not a thing.
It's not a thing. Like, I mean,
and its newspapers have fact checkers, right? It's not an
I mean-
outside agency or like a third party.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it. What does it say about you as an organization?
Right.
As a media.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a simple way to put it is, say, for example, this story happened, right?
Hmm.
So, some reporter went to Maharaj Bagh, the zoo, to actually see if there is such a creature. No, right? And then, like, they go back to the
That's it.
editor. Editor asks, is there such a
But
creature?
That's
No.
the thing. It's all clickbait, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
Mm.
what organizations are lazy. They don't have resources or reporters, or they just want to like save money. So you take something that's trending on Twitter,
Right.
or something your auntie sent you in the WhatsApp in the morning, right?
yeah.
And okay, मैं इसको story बना देता हूँ.
Right.
Let's just make this a story. You know, I got this crazy video. You know,
Yeah.
of like what you just said,
Snake
and just let me just take that and yeah, exactly, take the
Yeah.
snake baby video and make it a story. So it's all. I mean, it's not reporting. It's just
Right.
like clickbait stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to share what I learned from the media. It is possible to hypnotize a frog by placing it on its back and stroking it gently.
What are you
on the
watching?
stomach.
What are you reading? Why am I not reading this?
This is a website called The Dodo or something,
Okay.
which comes on my feed, Twitter feed all the time. So I sometimes they're like, oh, 10 amazing animal facts, click.
But
Huh.
And then I found this fact.
that's interesting. You are counting your social media feed also as media now.
Oh.
That's the
Obviously,
thing, yeah.
You
I
have
mean,
to.
I mean, you have to because, again, here they say that radio, TV, newspapers, internet, and several other forms of communication are
Right.
media.
Right.
And if you go forward, they actually say that telephone conversations are also a part of media. Just
Oh.
that if you reach, if your media reaches like, say, 100 or more people, then it's mass media,
Hmm.
right? Which is what they are saying. Which is interesting because I was just thinking,
Hmm.
this chapter is a little outdated also because they make mentions of the internet, but they don't really go into it.
Like they don't go into the social media.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
noticed that. Yeah. I mean, that is a bit strange because that's what's driving a lot of stuff. Look, the media's changed so much. And see, because I come from that vintage
Hmm.
generation that grew up with VHS tapes
Hmm.
and, no cell phones till I was in college. I can tell you that, I mean, like when we started in TV, it was pretty straightforward. हाँ, आप TV की story करो, घर जाओ, सो जाओ, सुबह फिर आओ, shoot a story for 2 days. My God, we had 2 days to do a story.
Wow.
Those were the days,
2 days to do
yeah,
the story.
or 3 days, or sometimes the whole week to work on long format stuff.
Did
you
that
know?
fully change the depth of every story?
Of course
also?
it did, because if you did like a 5-minute piece for the Sunday 9 o'clock show, which was like Star News Sunday
Mhm.
or whatever, it was like, you're actually doing a deep dive, you're traveling, you have like, the space to do like a long format thing. So all of that changed.
Yeah.
And now, like, you're doing digital.
Hmm.
You got to write for your website, you got to write for TV, do an OB for TV, then write a
Right.
TV story, and then you have to do other things like YouTube lives or Facebook live, and then put something out on Twitter. So it's actually much more challenging
Yeah.
today.
Hmm.
And I found that a bit of an adjustment.
Hmm.
Like I was like, okay, Facebook live kya hota hai?
Yeah,
What is it?
absolutely. Yeah, what is
And
it?
I had to do all this stuff.
But I mean, it's very interesting because I was just talking to like I have another show called ELI10, and I was talking to Sakshi Joshi about this, and she, I think, is a much more like she started working as a journalist in 2005, right? When did you start working as a journalist?
99.
99, right? So she went through that TV phase as well, right? But it was a very different TV phase than what you went through, because you have worked with NDTV for what, 23 years?
Yeah.
now? 23 years,
Yeah.
and that is the only organization you have worked with.
Yeah, except
Um,
for a brief 10 months where I worked with a public policy school, Kautilya School of Public Policy,
Right.
in the South, which
Right.
was a nice, different experience. I
Right.
took a break from TV.
Hmm.
But yeah, otherwise, in the media space, only NDTV.
And now you are back as a consulting
Yeah,
editor, right?
yeah.
Wahan pe. So I was just talking to Sakshi about this, right? Where the 24/7 news phenomenon, right? It started when she came in just as a journalist. And I think you also saw that phase
Yeah.
where news went from a half an hour bulletin to 24 hours bharna hai humko.
Haan.
What did you think then when was there like more pressure on you after that phase to do more content or stories or find more stories?
Well, obviously, like, when I joined, it was like, okay, it was the 9 o'clock news with
Right.
Pranoy, and, everybody kind of worked towards that. And it wasn't 24 hours strictly, but you had the breakfast show, and you had, and you had this evening prime time. So you had a lot of time and space to work on your content. But when it became 24/7, even then it was still okay, because, at least there were more bulletins in which your stories could potentially run, and you wouldn't have to cry if your story didn't make it to prime time, because it was very competitive, right? So if your story wasn't the headline story, it might be dropped.
Right.
And hota hai.
Yeah,
That's how
yeah.
news is, right? But it's when other channels started coming
Right.
and it became competitive.
Right.
Then you feel the pressure of like not just being like right with the news, but being first, which is kind of contradictory, because very often people have put out stuff which is wrong, like they've killed people off,
Yeah.
3 months before they died. That has happened.
Yeah.
So, stuff like that. So then that's how it changed. Then and you see that in newsrooms today. Even now, you'll get a message. I just saw one WhatsApp that came, oh my God, all the other channels are running XYZ khabar. Hamare paas kahan hai? So that, that constant thing of like
But then
being
why
on top
does
of things.
No, this is what I wanted to come to also, actually. So there was this I think a story that happened. I think the JNU invasion of ABVP, right, which had happened. Now India Today basically did this quote unquote sting operation back then, which was crazy. I mean, like, they went from these people who went in, they got confessions out, and they did that old school Cobra Post style report on it. I remember that back then the other channels had shifted away from the JNU fiasco. India TV ran it for 6 days or like a long time. They were running hashtags and everybody was watching that channel, right? I wanted to ask, why is there this need to just confirm? Like, oh, wo channel ye story kar raha hai, hum kyun nahi kar rahe? What decides that?
I mean, right now, frankly, it's numbers. So if it's
Right.
not, the BARC ratings, of course, are very controversial. We know the kind of mess that they're in. But YouTube numbers are now driving a lot of
Right.
the way the channels are looking at views, like real time views. So, how many people on YouTube are watching a particular show at that point. And we actually have like graphs which show you that if a particular story is being played up on a channel, how it starts, the arrow starts shooting up. And so we noticed, for example, so I used to think that why do people want to watch TV debates every day? Because maybe
Right.
because I do them, I'm tired of them and I wouldn't. But every time there's a TV debate, the arrow, the numbers go up,
Oh wow.
as opposed to just straight news. Not always, but through the day, so talk somehow drives things up.
Right.
And just in real time YouTube views.
Right.
So that is what is driving a lot of this stuff. And it is a conformity thing. Like obviously if it's a sting, you can't replicate that. So there's no point in then trying to, copy some, you can't copy that story. But I think every channel, I think there is a whole bunch of them, as we know, that just kind of follow each other's lead, and they're like sheep, and they'll just do whatever. Love jihad and all that nonsense. So I think what's at least made us stand out is that okay, we'll have a completely different take on that story,
Right.
And we'll be much more sober, in that sense, much more traditional in the way it's reported, and all the rest of it. But yeah, it happens. There is this kind of herd mentality that why does this channel have, and why don't
It's
you?
very interesting. Like, I'm just imagining, like, so there is a live stream of YouTube going on, which has like these. Every channel is doing this live stream. NDTV does it. All of them do. And if that is driving what story gets covered, I'm now thinking there is a way to game the system. Maybe
There
we
must
just have
be.
a mob just go in and like whenever unemployment is being talked about on a channel, you just have a mob raiding
By the way,
YouTube.
no,
and, like-
but it's true. Like I did, for example, an interview with Raghuram Rajan that did so well on the YouTube views, online as well, much
Right.
better than like our traditional debates. And it's with Raghuram Rajan, right?
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
conversation is like
Heavy.
it's heavy, and it's like half an hour, and it's just him, but you're talking about GDP numbers, but the way he breaks it down. But this is stuff people are interested in. So to say that people don't care about unemployment, or they don't care about the economy, that's crap. I'm just saying that it does matter to them. So it's not just divisive, Hindu Muslim, that kind of tutu meme stuff. It's not
Right.
just that. It really depends on who your guest is, what the content is. So if you get someone who is like, I did a show on the economy just a few weeks ago with just the chief economic advisor who retired from this government who resigned a few months ago, Kaushik Basu,
Yeah.
and another economist. And it did really well in numbers again, because it was just three people who knew what they were talking about. And it wasn't in that traditional debate format either.
Sure.
So I think people want good content. It's not that.
Even Ravish's show,
Yeah.
like it's always in the YouTube trending.
Hmm.
Right, I mean, like there is
Yeah, it is.
definitely a lot. Ravish has a giant followership
Yeah.
on YouTube. At least I know this.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
watch Ravish shows on YouTube. I don't watch TV. But I do see, like, say your show or Ravish ka show, which just shows up on my feed and I watch it. It's very interesting how that is also changing, right? And there is a line here which is very dramatic about it. Changing technology or machines and making technology more modern helps media to reach more people. It also improves the quality of sound and images that you see. But technology does more than this. It also changes the ways in which we think about our lives.
Yes. And the next line is funny. It's quite difficult for us to think of our lives without television.
I didn't purposefully read that because,
Can you imagine?
yeah, I would replace that with the internet right now.
Now it
Yeah.
would be internet.
Yeah, now with-
Smartphone.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know how I lived without that.
yeah.
Like-
As a TV journalist, do you feel threatened by the internet?
No.
No.
Why? Everyone can coexist, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're so lucky. My dad, who, was 50 years as a journalist and a traditional agency reporter, he's like, you guys are so lucky. You just Google something and your research comes up.
That's true.
And we didn't have that luxury. I
Right.
said, neither did I when I started, but okay, fine. I get your point. You're right. Like, you want to do research for a show. Like, you just hit the internet. So
Yeah.
I think the internet is a great tool. It's
Yeah.
just I don't know about social media.
Yeah.
That's another story, but it's not a threat.
But so maybe like another way to put it is, so when your shows go on TV versus when they go on, say, a YouTube or whatever, um again,
I'm sure the
medium is
online
changing.
views are more.
Of course they
Yeah.
are. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would say that they are, because I genuinely believe that your show gets more views on YouTube on a regular basis now. Um, d- can you coexist that way?
I think so, and it's already happening, right?
Hmm.
Like all of us are doing TV, we're doing digital, it's all like this cross-platforming thing is happening, and I think that's the way it will
But
continue
you
to
can't show
exist.
the same ads that you got on TV on your YouTube show.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then,
So I don't ask me about revenue models and things like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
and all that, because that is totally like I've only dealt with editorial, so that you
Right,
can
right.
ask our CEO.
Right.
But the thing is that it's there, and we've kind of coexisted for a while, and it's the only way forward.
So why do a show on the TV at all then?
Because I think mainstream quote unquote TV is, I don't agree with those who say it's a dying medium.
Yeah.
And the pandemic showed us that, because everyone who's kind of left TV and then has started something digitally will keep saying TV is dead, but it's not. During the pandemic, viewership for TV news went up exponentially
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
across the board, like it did for like digital sites
Of
and
course.
set. People wanted information, they wanted to know about COVID, they wanted to know what to do, not to do, etc., etc. So the audience is there. It's just a question of how you channel it.
Right.
So it's not dead at all, and it has an impact. I think also for a lot of organizations it's brand value. Like you don't want to give up the mainstream TV
Right.
platform, because it's part of your branding as well as an organization, that we have a TV channel and we have this digital outreach and we have XYZ.
Right.
So I think it's part of a branding exercise as well for a lot of organizations.
I'm one of those people who says that TV is dying. And
Why
I
do you
mean,
think so?
But
Just because
it's
you
very-
watch it online?
No, not just me. I mean, anecdotally, of course, I would say that everyone I know, literally everyone I hang out with, and everyone I, grew up with right now, nobody has a TV connection, right?
Are you 20?
No,
25?
I'm 32, Nidhi.
32?
Yes, I'm 32.
You're a child.
Yeah.
Should get friends who are more mature, is what she's saying.
But no, but if I'm 32,
Huh?
do you have anyone who has TV?
How old are you?
I'm
25.
27.
Oh my God, you're a child. See, you're a different generation. So I agree that
Yeah.
probably the average age of people who are watching my show on TV is in that
Higher.
70, 60 to I'm not being silly, I'm being
No,
genuine. It's an
absolutely.
older crowd, that is more traditional. They like to
Hmm.
watch their news before going to sleep, after
Right.
dinner, that kind of thing,
Right.
I think younger people are turning more and more to just watching stuff online.
Yeah,
Whether it's like either live streaming or they'll watch the video later. They don't necessarily want
exactly.
to.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily want to watch my 9:30 p.m. show at 9:30 p.m.
I watch it in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Huh.
So I think the way we consume news is changing, but it's not dying. Like I
Right.
don't think it's reached that point where it is dying. It's just that I think TV has had to reinvent itself a little bit.
Mhm.
And that's why you saw the emergence of TV debates, whether it was for financial reasons or the fact that the internet came. And what is the point of having a headline in the evening,
Hmm.
which people know happened 12 hours ago? Because
Right.
they did,
Mm.
right? It came up on everyone's smartphone.
Correct.
So you have to find a way to give a different take on the story, or to take it forward in some way, or to give it some analysis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something.
That I agree with. That I absolutely agree with.
I quickly want to talk about how the impact and how media changes the way we think, right? I think watching news through the algorithm is one of the most dangerous things ever,
Totally.
because you see one type of news, you like it just keeps showing you more and more and more. So like the idea of like, even on a same news channel where you have anchors who are a little here, a little there, like in that spiral of an algorithm, I think it just like, it's almost like the algorithm is gaslighting you into thinking whatever you want to think,
Yeah,
whatever you want
I
to
agree
see.
with you. Or it's like the captions on a news channel, right? Like
Right.
the moment it says, the channel shall remain nameless, but I'm saying that, you'll have stuff like, Lutyens cabal. I mean, I'm like,
Correct.
what is that? Yeah. I mean,
Right.
who is in Lutyens
Khan
now?
Market gang.
Khan Market. I mean, you have them as captions.
Yeah.
The lobby.
Yeah.
The lobby is not happy.
The lobby is not happy.
Or lobby questions. How dare they? I mean,
How dare they?
how yeah, but these are literally news how is this news captions? I mean,
Yeah.
this is something that wouldn't fly in any major news organization anywhere. So this is the kind of stuff that passes off as news, and it is. I mean, it's worrying on all sides of the ideological spectrum.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
So when you color a story in a particular way, so for example, I'll give you the example just like of this the death of this girl in Jharkhand, where you do have a certain section of the right wing media that just wants to portray it in that sort of love jihad,
Right.
that communal angle only. Whereas I'm sorry, but people do shitty things and commit crimes irrespective of their religion. Everything is
Sure.
not necessarily through that prism, but it's a horrible thing, and the person should be punished for it. It depends on what slant you want to take on a
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
and that happens a lot in our
Absolutely.
media today. But like even like for example, Riya Chakravarti, you saw, right, like how you had sort of the right wing establishment media portray her in as like the gold
Yeah.
digger, the murderess, whatever. And there was then the different take that we had, that it was just based on, okay, what is the evidence against her?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know, and
yeah.
if you just dispassionately look at it, it was nothing.
Yeah.
And so it
Even-
does color the minds of people.
But interestingly enough, like another example I can give is of Arnab Goswami in this case, right? So Arnab
I was wondering
Goswami-
when his name would pop into the conversation.
Yeah. Anyway, during this Riya Chakrabarti time only, or around that time, Shiv Sena went after Arnab, right? Where
Yeah.
they, wanted to put him in jail. He said something like Uddhav Bhara or whatever he did, like Palghar ke baad. It was very interesting because his whole story was a non-story. Like why they put him in jail or why they...
Yeah.
So I remember News Laundry did this whole investigative piece, and basically they were like, isme koi evidence hai hi nahi. Like why are you hounding basically Arnab like to go to jail or whatever it is. Same thing. Like Riya was much more extended, and the person who was doing it was also Arnab. But in this case also, then you see that same tactic being used against Arnab.
Yeah.
And it's like becomes this gigantic circus. I mean,
Yeah, it is a circus. And I mean, and that's another story. Like, he shouldn't have been arrested, and the misuse of police and
Absolutely,
agencies and whatever. You can't say that it's, the BJP is wrong to do it, and then you do the same thing with your state government. So
Yeah.
it does become a circus, and they don't see the irony in that.
absolutely.
That
But the dangerous thing is that as a viewer, I'm not seeing that it's a circus. I'm taking it as reality, and
It
that
is.
rage is manufactured in my mind. So
it's like the whole, like, remember when COVID first happened and the whole Tablighi Jamaat thing happened?
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
So then you had so-called news channels, because I don't think they're news
Hmm.
channels, but they
Agreed.
made it a whole Muslim issue
yeah,
and projected an entire community, vilified an
Yeah,
entire
yeah,
community,
yeah.
which was disgraceful.
yeah,
And then look what happened. The courts exonerated all of them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you actually had, these women going to their neighborhood sabziwala and having conversations and saying that, like Muslims are passing this on. I
Hmm.
mean, what nonsense.
Yeah.
Because
there were videos coming of vendors getting attacked during
Yeah.
that time.
yeah,
right? It's
exactly. So it
horrifying.
does that. I mean, television is a very, very powerful medium.
Hmm.
Yes.
It is like, you were just in Kashmir,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And if you talk to a lot of ordinary Kashmiris, they are so unhappy with how Kashmiris are vilified and generalized and painted in one brush as like some anti-nationals and all the rest of it. So many, just like, they'll turn around and say, boss, what is this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're as Indian as anyone else, or
Yeah.
we may have grievances, but to paint us in this
Yeah.
generalized way. So that's caused a lot of resentment there amongst young people in
And
particular.
interestingly, this is actually, we spoke to Omar also about this, right? Where we went on this boat ride and we were just asking people how to citizen, or, kya lagta hai aapko, etc. Everybody's like, oh, we are so happy. We are amazing, like business bad gaya, all that, right? And then next day we realized, like, they went again to do this and they were like, तुम camera on करके बात करोगे तो तुमको क्या expected है? Like, what will people say? Like, if you want to talk to them, shut down the camera and talk to them.
But my point is that again, that's why I say TV is not dead, because it has the power to really influence opinion in a way.
It does.
I mean, why do you think the establishment doesn't like Ravish, for example? Because Ravish reaches out to a very large audience, Hindi speaking audience. he doesn't hold back,
Hmm.
right? So it makes an impact, and therefore he riles a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does make an impact.
Absolutely, it does.
Also,
Absolutely.
he's hilarious.
Yeah.
He's so funny.
So
Satire
but
is next level.
but I'm just saying that the point is he makes that impact, and it you know it does influence the way people look at things.
Right.
Mm.
So if we constantly have Hindu Muslim on
Mhm.
TV night after night, you're calling like crazy people on like extreme sides of the spectrum. Obviously, at some level, some guy watching it who's gonna be like, is this the case? Although I meet sensible people,
Yeah.
like, a lot, like my trainer who I
Yeah.
train with, he was like, I come from a place in UP where we've lived side by side with Muslims all my life.
Mm.
And the way he was talking about one TV debate, and he said the way he was very upset about these
Mhm.
demolitions in UP and stuff.
Mhm.
And he said, this is wrong.
Hmm.
And he says, I'm a Hindu, but I have never faced a problem with my neighbors, and I live in a predominantly Muslim neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it was just sad, like, he could see through it.
Yeah.
But he said that there were other members of his family who couldn't,
Right.
Hmm.
who were just like, oh shit, there must be something true if it's coming on TV like this.
Right. Oh, that's actually very interesting, and I want to like.
It's like WhatsApp. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
one of my
Precisely.
aunts is convinced that that the snake baby, which
Yeah.
I'm sure was sent on WhatsApp,
Yes.
was true.
Yeah. I mean, exactly, right?
Because it came on WhatsApp. It must be
Yeah.
correct.
But there is this thing attached to TV also, especially in the older generation, right? So I remember, I started my YouTube show 2017, right? So I was on YouTube and I was doing a few of my videos have done well, etc. At that point. Then in 2018, I think Mirror Now called me for like one of these panel thingies, right? And I went there.
You came for a couple of my panels also.
I did.
Which was great
So I was
fun.
coming to that. So
Huh.
like I did Mirror Now, and that was done. And I think 2 days later, I came on your show, right? That I think the big debate which you used to host. My
Well, it was
parents were blown away.
Acha?
They were like, oh my god, हमारा बेटा TV पे आ गया, and I'm getting calls and like मेरा YouTube show देख के मुझे एक person ने call
हाँ, तो
किया.
फिर कहाँ से TV dead है? This was only a few years ago. You're just contradicting yourself.
I think he's
No.
bitter. He's like, I mean,
I
internet
am.
doesn't have what TV has.
My theories are falling flat.
Yes.
Yeah, I went from pay to keep news free to this.
Correct.
Yeah.
See?
I'm changing, I'm evolving as well. And that is actually a very interesting thing about this chapter, again, going back to the chapter, is they also talk about advertising and sponsorship and how it affects the news, right? The interesting thing is the title is Media and Money, right? It says, in a news studio, it is not only the newsreader who needs to be paid,
Firstly,
but
this
also
term, the newsreader term, yeah. I mean, like, who wrote this chapter? Stupid people.
so
Huh.
what would you, an anchor?
Journalists.
Thank you.
Anchor needs to be
journalist.
paid. Anchor
Well,
needs to
not
be paid.
everyone who anchors is necessarily a journalist, but most are, at least in our organization.
Yeah.
All of them are.
Yeah. But do you think that, like, again, there, like, the boundary between journalist and an anchor is.
You're the
Go on.
same thing. I mean, you should be, ideally. Like,
Yeah.
all of us who've, like, in NDTV at least, all of us who anchor prime time now, we've been reporters our whole lives,
Right.
on the ground.
Hmm.
So, it's only later that one becomes an editor and you give younger people an opportunity and you mentor them and do all that. But for big stories, you still come out.
Yeah.
So that's what it should be.
And you do plain news reading then, basically. Is that what you're
Reading
coming to?
is like
Reading is
is not really the word
Right.
because I mean, let's move away from that
Right,
thing. A lot of
right.
us just ad lib what we are
Sure. I mean, like points
Yeah.
likhe hue and you basically.
but nobody writes it for you.
You write it for yourself.
And one of the first, when I was a young anchor at NDTV, I was told, write your own anchor links. Nobody will write them for you. Otherwise, you will go on air. It'll be a blank auto cue.
That's true.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So we were always trained.
Right.
You are responsible for your own content.
Right.
So nobody will write it for you.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not newsreader anymore.
Correct.
It's not news.
Those days are gone.
Now I know why you were so like about
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So they basically say that
Media and money.
everybody else needs to be paid as well.
Well, yes. Firstly, I want to please, like, why do when you think of journalists, why must you think of people with jholas, and why must we be poor?
Yeah.
Why? We all have to earn a living, yaar. It's okay. It's not a crime to want to have a good salary,
Yeah.
to make a decent living. And I mean, it's good if journalists are paid well. They
Yeah.
should be paid well.
Yeah.
You know, I had this argument with yesterday only with someone who said, why do journalists want the good life? I said, Arey bhai, why not? Who doesn't want the good life?
Of
It's
course.
fine. I mean, it's not some Mahatma Gandhi type sacrifice that you must make. No,
Yeah.
you must think independently. You must be fair in what you do a good job, and yes, get paid for it also. Yaar, theek hai.
Absolutely.
So this thing, making money is not the issue.
Yeah.
You know, it's a question of what you're doing in
Hmm.
order to make that money.
Absolutely.
Are you selling hate for profit?
Hmm.
Right? Which is what a large section of almost all of TV media is doing today.
Right.
It is selling hate for profit.
Right.
Right.
I am proud that at least NDTV as an organization is the complete opposite, where we have stayed away from that model.
Hmm.
Right.
It's not in our DNA to do it. हमारी बस की बात भी नहीं है.
हम्म.
करने की कोशिश भी करते तो we would have failed.
बस की बात
नहीं है, because it's not something that we are tuned to do.
Hmm.
Okay.
Our instinctive reaction to an akhlaq lynching will be to go after those who lynched him, not to
Right.
justify or to say that he had meat in his fridge, which was what the others were doing.
Right. Right.
There's no if and but.
Right.
Right? So,
So there is that clarity that you know who to go after. Go after is a heavy term.
Yeah.
Like who to question.
correct.
Right.
Right.
That
That's
is what.
that is what journalists should do.
Yeah.
And so making money from journalism or paying people well, why not? They should. I think, I mean, across the board, the industry needs to wake up and pay journalists better.
Hmm.
Because journalism is not an easy job, and why should it be shitty pay?
Yeah. 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 And now there is considerable risk attached to it also.
In every way.
Yeah.
Look, it's always been a tough job.
Hmm.
You're working pretty much 24 hours a day. You're always on call. You can be called to do a story in the middle of the night. I can tell you countless examples where I've been pulled out of bed at 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning. Ye hua hai, this one has been killed, some bomb blast, some train accident,
Wow.
some natural disaster. You are doing all that stuff. You are often skipping meals. You are traveling for days on end. Your
Hmm.
camera team that doesn't get credit on the screen. I agree with this bit, that the civics chapter, it talks about the fact that, you have people who are doing the lights, the recordings, that, the producers, they don't get the on-air credit also.
Hmm.
Right.
And they should be paid well because it's a damn tough job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reporters have a damn tough job. या सुबह तुमको बोलते हैं कि आज वो अरविंद केजरीवाल धरना कर रहा है,
Hmm.
दिन में आपको बोलेंगे कि farmers have come to Singhu border, जाओ जी.
Mhm.
So it's and then they'll say शाम तक cyclone आ गया, चले जाओ जी उड़ीसा.
Yeah.
It's crazy. That's a reporter's life is really
It's
tough.
wild.
It's very interesting also because during the pandemic this became so obvious also, right? Because so in my newsroom, like in News Laundry for example, there were obviously reporters who were going out still when the first wave was happening, and it was dangerous, right? They were sent to hospitals where actually victims are coming. There is COVID there, and people were reporting from it. Faye D'Souza actually went into AIMS and did that whole PPE suit. 2 days she spent there and she reported from there.
Mhm.
That's freakishly dangerous,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And-
so pay people. It's fine to pay people.
Yeah,
There's nothing
and
wrong with
even-
media making money.
Even for example, when the farmers' protest was
Yeah.
happening, right? Now, in the farmers' protest, again, no vaccine had come out by that time. I had gone there. And I was wearing masks. Our producer and everybody was wearing. Nobody else is wearing masks, right? Immediately dangerous for me, right? West Bengal elections, same thing. Giant rally, go inside there with masks and like sweating like crazy, but nobody's wearing masks. So again, it's like your parents are constantly calling you and saying कि तुझे तो COVID होने वाला है. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it didn't happen. But I mean, in the pandemic, it became so obvious that reporters are going out, risking their lives literally, while everybody else is dying, and they are doing their jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So why shouldn't they be paid for it?
By the way,
Yeah.
about masks, I don't think masks are required. I got a WhatsApp forward which said that like it's just a hoax.
Oh,
Ah,
of course.
Acha, of course. Then it
yeah.
must be true.
It
Then
must,
it
be
must
true.
be
It
true.
must be true. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. One question I want to come to quickly is should news be seen as a business? Right? Because in order to get paid more for the journalists, there needs to be money that is coming into the organization, and that money will come from advertisers and maybe advertorials from different governments, which your channel also does. Every channel does it. Like Delhi government will do like a half an hour slot with like कोई तो भी पूजा कर रहे हैं तो उसका हाफ एन आवर स्लॉट लाइव कर दिया,
Oh.
या फिर हो रहा है वो, मतलब आंध्र प्रदेश की गवर्नमेंट भी कर रही है, सब तेलंगाना,
But वो
एवरीवन
पूजा वगैरह कर रहे हैं मतलब
हाँ जी, हाँ,
हाँ,
Havan live telecast.
हवन
But
live
I'll tell you
telecast.
something. Look, the revenue model is crap, right? It's not the ideal way of making money. It's I mean, TV channels, anyone in the media should make money. In an ideal world, this should not be the way you have to do it,
yeah.
right? In an ideal world, subscribers should be paying for news, and that should be driving everything. But that's not the way the world is.
It's not,
And
unfortunately.
it's not, right? So in this imperfect world we live in, with corporatization and everything else, as long as there is the space, if there is the space to be able to be independent and not have editorial interference, then I think you're still okay.
Yeah.
It's when there is editorial interference, or you are asked to toe a certain line, which then it becomes, then it's problematic.
Absolutely.
And it's not something that's unique to India. I mean, everyone's been talking about the Washington Post and Bezos, and there are so many other examples in the US, etc., where you have corporate ownership of media. But ultimately, so that's not the issue, I think, anymore, because it is imperfect. It's really a question of independence editorially.
Yeah, but that's what, right? So I mean, as a subscription, so I think news has always been free for us, so we don't really see it as a product worth paying for. Like if I put it super crudely.
Yeah, you've worked in a place which drives itself only on subscriptions, right? So how has that worked?
So I would say that the model is
it's noble.
It's noble, yes. It's also solid in places, but it's also in flux, right? So like there
So it's
would
erratic.
be good months.
Yeah.
It's very erratic. Not even like understatement bhi nahi hai ki it's very erratic, right? So and it almost feels like sometimes when like the MSM, mainstream media, ad funded media, is not doing a story and you end up doing a story which becomes big, then you get like a flux of subscribers, right? But that is so random. It can't be a business model, right?
So that's the thing. Now, when you have an organization that has to pay, let's say, 2,000 people, and how does it sustain itself? I think if you make clear, for example, that if you have an advertorial, say from a state government, and you make it clear, right, constantly that this is an ad. Like, you have to have that disclaimer in place. Again, I say it's not ideal.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not. And one is not like thrilled about it.
Yeah.
But one is also living in realistic times where we have to find a way to be able to pay people's salaries
Right.
without compromising our integrity.
Right.
So I think a lot of people who are sanctimonious about all these things, let them be happy in their sermonizing. But the real world is very different.
Right.
One interesting way to also look at like the subscription model, which I've been thinking about as well, was for example, they can expand and collapse very quickly. But keeping people on payroll is a problem then. Right, where you won't be able to give incentives, you won't be able to offer any sort of.
And that's not easy. That's not an easy choice for everyone.
It's not.
It's
not.
very nice to say, "Yeah, walk away into the sunset." Why? I also don't like those who lecture, young reporters, let's say at Republic or something, and force them to take some moral position. You don't know that person's circumstances. Maybe this person needs this job.
Yeah.
And can't do without it. They're the breadwinner of their family.
Yeah.
Don't judge people.
Yeah.
And yes, if someone can walk away, sure, that's their choice. But this whole judgment about all these things, it's very irritating.
It's very it can be annoying, and I feel like that you're absolutely correct there. It's like I have been in places where I didn't want to be in that job, but I had to because I had to fucking pay the rent, man.
Exactly. Thank you. That's the point.
Right. I have worked with corrupt politicians because he was giving me a salary like every month, at least salary, paisa to aa raha hai mere paas. So for like those,
and you're not
6-7 months.
you're not doing anything wrong. So
exactly.
you're still trying to make an honest day's living out of it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, exactly. I agree.
And I mean, of course, I completely agree with you that the young people shouldn't be judged. I've asked this question to many journalists, and I will ask this to you. If a young person comes to you today, would you recommend that they become a journalist?
I would, because I still I have a intrinsically deep passion for journalism as a for me, it's not just a job. I think
Hmm.
it's a way, it's your life.
Hmm.
I would only advise them to do it though if they're ready to give up the rest of like a lot of comforts. Like it's not an easy job. It's not an easy profession, but it's something that can be so rewarding if it's done right. And I think it needs good people. It can be rewarding because it's not just about investigative journalism, but you wake up in the morning not knowing what the story is going to be today.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. You don't know what people you'll meet, and it opens your eyes. It should hopefully open your mind. Not if you do it the Godi media way, not that way, because that's not media. So I'm just saying, if it's done the right way, I tell young people that I talk to that if you're passionate about news, you're passionate about things that are happening in the country, please become a journalist, because journalism needs good people.
Right.
And I would still encourage them to do it, because the only way we're going to change this is if good people come into the system and question it and push back and say that we need to reclaim what the media used to be.
Yeah. But, I mean, I would also like argue that it's getting more dangerous to do like solid journalism. Like, even
It's not easy.
it's not easy at all. I mean, there are many jobs that are not easy, and journalism is one of them. Let's not. But in the case of journalism, it so happens that, like for example, like when I do a story or when I do something, you're so brave. You asked this, or you did a
अरे
video
वो
on this.
मुझे लोग कहते हैं, it's a normal question you ask, let's say some BJP MP or something, you're so brave. Why? What is brave in this? यार
Exactly,
normal
yeah.
सवाल है.
Exactly, it is
हाँ.
right. I mean, it's so
Some
funny
of it
that
is a bit exaggerated, I
Yeah,
have to say.
yeah.
I mean, some of that I agree that actually I think the environment for the bravest journalists in this country today are those in small town India.
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
that's what I was
in
saying.
the
Yeah.
Hindi heartland and everywhere else, who are actually, like, for example, exposing, let's say, midday meal schemes, or they're exposing corruption on the ground, or mining mafias, and they get slapped with FIRs, like, and nobody notices it in the way that they would say notice a sedition case against Rajdeep Sardesai. They will not pick it up on page one, against, there was this yesterday the Supreme Court was pissed because of this hounding of a journalist in Jharkhand, for example. You have Siddiq Kapan's case, which is now in the Supreme Court finally. So these people don't normally make national headlines, and they are actually the ones who get you the real stories on the ground.
Yeah.
And they really put themselves out there and at risk. Because they're passionate.
Proximity.
Everything.
I
And-
mean, the authority you're challenging, it also depends on the proximity, right? Like, so
Yeah.
if you're in a small town place where you are, say, questioning like a mafia, which is literally operating in your backyard, you're screwed. I mean, like, the authority will fight back, and the authority usually has ties to higher authorities.
I mean, there's a
and then
reason why our press freedom rankings are so crap.
150.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't buy this argument that, like, we don't care and the methodology is bad. Of course we care. Our government lobbied to have those rankings changed.
Yeah, yeah.
So obviously you care.
Yeah.
Obviously you care enough to respond to them.
Yeah.
So it does rankle. And I mean, actually, the media itself needs to worry, like, why have we let ourselves come into this sort of position where our rankings are so awful?
That's actually very true. But there is a question, and I think I'll put this in the end. You wanted to also like talk about this a
Yeah.
little bit.
So I had like a very big question, which Stuart Hall also like talks about this question, which is, there are many events that happen. Like, even in a day, there are more events than we can count that have happened. As a journalist, what is the process for choosing which events will be represented?
As in, what makes the headlines?
What makes the headlines?
I think
what makes the news?
look, I think that's a very subjective thing. Some things are obvious headlines. So if there's, like, say, a plane crash, right, and 200 people have died, and it's happened, especially if it's a domestic incident, it's an obvious first headline. It's a tragedy, lives have been lost, train accident, again, big casualties immediately. Or if it's, like, similarly a natural disaster of that proportion. So that's one. I think there are some things, if they have a political impact, like, for example, tomorrow if Rahul Gandhi contests the Congress president elections and then loses, that would be a huge story, because the principal opposition, and it's an obvious top
Correct.
story, right? Some things are not so obvious. Like today when I opened the newspaper, I could see that the Indian Express had this terrific story, just looking at NCRB data on, daily wages, suicides, crime against women being higher. But the front pages of other newspapers had other stuff, fallout of Ghulam Nabi Azad going, and there was no obvious first headline.
Right.
And it's so then it becomes a little subjective. So I think you try, for example, at least we we have like a conference call, and then we like all meet, and we so different shows will look at different subjects. We tell each other, okay, like this is what I want to focus on today. I do a lot of political stuff because that's my area of interest. So but Vasu likes to look at data, and he does, because he has a team that does a deep dive into data. So I don't know if that's what he's doing today, but he might be looking at this NCRB data. I don't know, but it's totally up his street to do that. So if it's something that impacts people, like for example, if GDP numbers will always be one of our first headlines on NDTV, because we then try to break it down for people, or an interest rate hike. So that means, okay, your home loan is going to get more expensive, then it is a first headline because it directly impacts people in that way.
Right.
So I think we try to look at what is something that would immediately impact or have a bigger impact on people's lives.
Sure.
If you go purely by YouTube numbers, then Salman Khan's cat is going to be the first headline. But that can't be your first headline. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you have to, that is where editorial gatekeeping comes in.
Right.
You know, you can't say that, oh, I'm doing this because the viewers want it. Well, boss, like if you go by what's trending on your website, it is Salman Khan's cat.
Yeah. But in your case, I would point out one thing, which a clip went viral also.
Oh God, I've become a meme.
Yeah, you've become a meme. It's freakishly hilarious. Where what you were talking to this woman who was complaining about Ranveer Singh's
bum.
nude photo shoot.
Oh,
And,
yes.
And she broke her anchor like
I just very
lost
bad.
So
But she was a good sport.
but I would then ask you the same question he asked, right? What made you choose that story that day?
So the reason I chose the story was for a totally serious reason, which was that it was a frivolous case. You stop hounding people for stupid things.
Yes.
That was the whole point of it.
Right.
And why should the police take up this case? It's a waste of your resources, your time. यार इस देश में बहुत कुछ हो रहा है. तुम्हें यही काम है. Ranveer Singh, was he naked or not? So the idea was to do it that way.
Right.
Not to tabloidize it, and it just became like that because it became this absurd back and forth.
Yeah.
And then it just turned to something, and honestly, to be very honest, and I said sorry to her on air as well, because I felt bad. I didn't want her to think look, I may disagree with her, we may not agree with her views, but she's entitled to her view. Right? So I said that I didn't mean to, I'm not laughing at you, it was just the hilarity of the whole exchange.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, don't you think this is a colossal waste of the time of the police? Now the courts are अब उसने कल अपनी statement भी record करी है पुलिस के सामने. I don't know what they asked him. Do you have a birthmark somewhere that will identify? I don't know. I mean, but can you imagine the waste of time of this litigation?
Yeah.
So you are pursued. So that was the whole idea of that show.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I've never done it only just like, okay, let's just do a show, purely for eyeballs, because a lot of the times I'll do stuff on just the economy and stuff which nobody will touch.
But that one meme made me go and watch your show.
No, that one,
Like,
I can't believe 23 years of work has been now defined by that meme. But as these college students were so excited. They were like, ma'am, you're a meme.
yeah.
And I was like, that's made you notice, like we saw you on that. So for whatever. Chalo, it was a light-hearted moment.
It was fun. It was
Wait,
Yeah.
I have one more quick
We
question.
shouldn't take life too seriously also.
Yes, absolutely.
I have a quick question on the same note. Can you remember all the times you have broken as an anchor? Like you have cracked, you have
Never.
laughed?
This was the
This
first
was
time.
the first time?
First and only time.
Damn.
Wow.
23 years it took, huh?
Yeah, it took 23
That's
years.
amazing.
And it took the word bum to do it.
Yeah, it did the bum. And there were music videos made on it
Yeah,
also.
some of the memes were very
Very
good.
fun,
Yeah,
very fun.
Yeah.
I want to ask one final question, which is this is a very interesting part of the chapter, so I didn't want to skip this. They have given 2 news reports, right? Which is a factory was shut down. So one perspective of the news report says that there was a crackdown on polluting factories, right? Where the factories are the victims here. The other is on closure of factories causes unrest, right? Which is the other perspective, that the people who lost their jobs, they are the real victims here, right? But then like when these protesters start protesting, some newspaper report it as, so they are causing a nuisance.
Does
But-
it sound familiar? Deja vu?
Yes.
Is your hair standing on end? Farmers protest? Hello. Shaheen Bagh? Hello. Same thing?
It's very interesting. 12-year-olds are being taught this though. Like they actually have like a very interesting question here in the end, in the exercise, which I will quickly read out. As a class project, decide to focus on a particular news topic. and cut out stories from different newspapers on this. Also, watch the coverage of this topic on TV news, compare two newspapers, and write the similarity and differences in their reports. Right? It will help you answer what information is it leaving out, what information is it providing.
This is a good exercise to do.
Exactly.
Actually, journalists today should do it.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, like, if this one question, if I put out, right, and maybe I elicit some answers, it would be a fascinating exercise to
It
do.
would be, because you'll see the difference.
Yeah.
You'll see, and it's and by the way, it's not just TV.
Yeah.
Print is equally
course.
guilty or whatever of the same.
Of course.
So it'll all be in the headline. So I've seen newspapers, for example, if there's an allegation, let's say against somebody in the government, the headline will be so and so denies allegation, not कि allegation क्या है.
Right.
Yeah.
पहले ये तो बताओ.
But
Issue क्या है?
Like we even see that with how New York Times handles Israel-Palestine, right? Like Palestinians are always Palestinians die. Israelis are killed. So like the use of active passive
Yeah,
voice.
yeah.
So like as someone who's consuming the news, like is there any tips, any advice you'd give to how to see through the biases of the news that you are seeing?
My only advice to people would be to diversify your sources of news. And don't think that like if you're watching Republic TV, I don't know why you're doing that to yourself, but okay, fine, you want to watch it, but do watch something else, even if it's India Today or NDTV, to just get a more holistic perspective about a story. I think everyone should read the Indian I like the Indian Express a lot, and the Hindu, but I need to read the Times of India because I need to know, like, because they'll often have a different take on a story, or they just package it very differently. Sometimes it's more interesting, or they'll have a different, so it's and then of course there's social media, like I find Twitter only useful for the fact that you can follow news handles of big different organizations all over the world and really try and get a sense of what's going on.
Right.
And so do that. So if you are someone who's really interested, and I would say that just like keep in mind what the biases are of that place, and try and look at multiple sources for your news consumption.
ये क्वेश्चन यहाँ पे भी थोड़ा सा आंसर किया है इन्होंने. We therefore need to analyze the news by asking the following questions. What is the information I'm learning from this report? What information is not being provided? From whose point of view is the article being written? Whose point of view is being left out, and why? I think that's also, again, that's a great exercise to do for practically everything that you read and do. Just to end, Adani is taking over NDTV, or taking over, something is happening. Like, I mean, he has bought shares, and there is a company which has bought shares, etc., etc. What is your take on it?
First, he hasn't taken over yet.
Yeah.
So there's, I think still some way to go, but honestly, it's above my pay grade. I don't know what's happening. And that's the honest truth.
Yeah.
So
No, fair enough.
All I can tell you is that it's come as a surprise.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Just one more thing. My electricity bill, Adani, has been a lot. If I give you a letter, you think you could pass it on to him at all? It would be...
It'll be helpful.
Great. It would be very helpful.
Yeah. We have a friend in that now.
Yep.
In that ecosystem. But thank you so much, Nidhi. I know you have to go, and we had to rush this end part a little bit. But thank you so much for spending time.
Thanks
with
so
us.
much for having me.
One quick point. 1 minute. This censorship, we haven't talked about censorship, feels like internal censorship. I just quickly want to ask, is there ever intervention from higher authorities when you are reporting on a story that's where the
I think
take
higher
is?
authorities, who? As in like
As in
Sarkari?
the government.
The government gave up on NDTV long ago. हमको कौन phone करेगा? We are the black sheep.
Oh, amazing. So you are liberated in that sense.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't think, and we've not done anything to merit some. From their perspective, probably 10 times a day. But I think that
You normalize dissent. Is that
what
what
is
you
dissent?
did?
There's nothing dissent about it. We're just doing our job.
Yeah.
And that's called dissent now. My
That's
God,
what-
asking normal questions is called dissent.
I
Imagine.
know,
It's
I
called
know.
brave. I deserve
I love it.
me and Ravish and Vasu, and we all deserve some peace
No,
prize.
but who would have thought that I would be the brave person on screens?
Yeah. To say why did this happen?
Yeah, exactly.
You're
Like
so
just,
brave to ask why.
I mean, questioning authorities is always fun.
That's what journalists are supposed to do.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to ask how many mangoes do you like.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not journalism.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that It's not about like how many hours did you sleep, how hard do you work. That's not journalism. Journalism is all about holding authority to account. And that's why I say people need to go back and read the civics books, because there are too many people, educated people, who think that it's the media's job to help the government
Hmm.
or somehow like be another appendage, and that's
Right.
not.
Hmm.
तो
It's
उनको ये
not.
बुक भेज दो.
Yeah, भेजना ही उन्होंने ही लिखा है.
मेरे सारे NRI cousins को भेज दो. Shit, I'm going to be like excommunicated from my family.
One simple thing to take away from this is that the government is already spending so much money advertising their greatness. Why do you want to add to that? There should be people questioning them instead. Like, that's the whole point of the media. That is the whole point of journalism. And we have, thankfully, people like Nidhi Razdan there to do journalism.
Thank
so-
you for your bravery and the
Yeah.
courage.
Oh my
So
God, so
embarrassed.
courageous.
I'm so
Nidhi, you're
embarrassed.
so courageous. I love
Okay,
it.
now I have to go.
This is a good place to end this at. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Nidhi, for joining in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shreyas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you in the next episode.